Imagine a being so radiant, so breathtakingly magnificent, that even the stars would pale in comparison to his brilliance. Before he became the symbol of darkness, Lucifer was the crown jewel of heaven, the pinnacle of divine craftsmanship. He wasn't just another angel, he was the most exquisite entity God ever formed. Every fiber of his existence was woven with celestial perfection, his beauty unparalleled, his intellect unmatched, and his strength beyond comprehension. Lucifer's very name means light bringer or bearer of dawn. He wasn't merely an angel, he was the angel, standing above the rest as heaven's most luminous creation. His radiance shimmered like the first light of morning, a beacon of purity and grace that filled the heavens with awe. To gaze upon him was to witness divine artistry in its most refined form. Among the celestial host, he was admired, revered, and beloved beyond measure. God didn't just create Lucifer to be beautiful, he gave him purpose. Lucifer was entrusted with a position of immense responsibility, making him one of the highest-ranking beings in all of existence. Many believe he led the heavenly choir, orchestrating melodies that resonated through the cosmos, filling the realms with harmonies so pure and enchanting that even the angels themselves were spellbound. His voice wasn't just heard, it was felt. A celestial symphony that brought the very essence of creation into harmony. Beyond his musical brilliance, Lucifer was a guardian of divine law, a pillar of wisdom, and an executor of God's will. His knowledge transcended human understanding, stretching into the farthest corners of the universe. Among the heavenly hierarchy, he stood closest to God, basking in divine radiance, carrying out his commands with unwavering precision. He was, in every sense, the embodiment of perfection. But perfection has a dangerous companion: self-awareness. Lucifer began to see his own brilliance, and for the first time, a question crept into his mind, one that would change the course of eternity. If I am the most glorious of all, why must I serve rather than rule? At first, it was just a fleeting thought, an innocent wonder. But thoughts have power, and this one took root deep within his heart. Admiration slowly transformed into pride, and pride soon evolved into something darker, something more sinister. The realization of his own greatness became intoxicating, and the more he pondered, the more he questioned his place in the celestial order. Lucifer saw himself not as a servant, but as an equal. Why should he bow when he could stand? Why should he worship when he could be worshipped? The divine order no longer seemed like a sacred structure. It felt like a cage, and he, the brightest of all, was trapped within it. Pride is a subtle poison. It does not destroy in an instant. It erodes slowly, corroding the soul one thought at a time. Lucifer's admiration of God turned into envy, and that envy birthed the most dangerous ambition ever conceived. He did not merely wish for more, he desired it all. He began whispering among the angels, sowing seeds of doubt. Was it truly just for only one to rule while others served? Were they not also powerful, divine, and magnificent? Shouldn't they have a voice, a choice, a kingdom of their own? Some listened, some turned away. But for the first time in heaven's eternal existence, there was division. And so, the most radiant angel, the one who stood closest to the divine throne, took his first steps on the path of his own destruction. But he would not walk it alone. Lucifer's charisma was as dazzling as his form. He spoke with eloquence, with conviction, weaving his words into a vision of freedom and power. Many angels, captivated by his promise of independence, began to question the very foundation of heaven's hierarchy. These were not mere whispers anymore. This was an underground movement, growing steadily with each passing moment. Those who aligned with Lucifer saw themselves not as rebels, but as liberators. They were the ones breaking free from servitude, stepping into their own divine destiny. And at the heart of it all was Lucifer, their leader, their shining beacon of revolution. But with rebellion comes consequence, and Lucifer knew that defying the Almighty would not come without a cost. The heavens trembled as fault lines formed within the celestial host. God, omniscient and all-seeing, watched as his most beloved creation chose pride over loyalty. Yet divine patience is boundless. Lucifer was not immediately cast down. Instead, God allowed the angels to make their choice. For true love and devotion cannot be forced, it must be freely given. As the number of dissenters grew, so too did the tension. The line had been drawn, and soon the heavens would bear witness to a war unlike any other. It was not merely a battle of strength, but a clash of ideologies. On one side, Lucifer and his legion of angels, fueled by pride and the belief that they deserve sovereignty. On the other, the loyal angels, led by the Archangel Michael, standing firm in their devotion to the Creator. The skies of heaven, once filled with harmony and light, erupted in chaos. Swords of divine fire clashed, the sound of battle resonating through the cosmos. It was said that the sheer force of their conflict sent ripples through existence itself. The rebels fought with fierce determination, believing in their cause, but loyalty to God proved stronger. Michael, with a voice like thunder, confronted Lucifer at the height of battle. "Who is like God?" he declared, his words shaking the very fabric of heaven. And with that, the tides turned. Lucifer, despite his brilliance, could not overcome the will of the Almighty. Defeated, the once greatest angel found himself cast down from heaven, his radiance stripped away. No longer the light bringer, he became Satan, the adversary, the fallen one. And with him, those who followed his path were also exiled, their celestial forms twisted, their rebellion sealing their fate. They fell like lightning, plummeting into the abyss, their cries echoing as they descended. No longer angels of light, they became the rulers of darkness, shaping the underworld into their new dominion. But even in his fall, Lucifer remained unbroken. His defeat was not the end, it was only the beginning. And from the depths of his exile, he vowed to continue his war, not in the heavens, but in the hearts of mankind. At first it was just a fleeting thought, an echo of curiosity within Lucifer's brilliant mind. He began to look at himself, at his own magnificence, and a realization dawned upon him. I am the most beautiful among all. I am the strongest, the most wise. None shine brighter than I do. He marveled at his own splendor, the way his radiance illuminated the heavens, the way his voice led the celestial choirs in perfect harmony. But soon, admiration turned into something more dangerous. A single question took root in his mind. Why must I serve when I can rule? It was a thought that he dared not voice at first, but it lingered in his soul like a whisper in the wind. Slowly, pride began to grow, first as a quiet ember, then as a raging fire, consuming the humility and devotion he once held for his Creator. Lucifer had been given so much power, beauty, authority, yet he began to see his gifts not as blessings, but as reasons for his own supremacy. He looked at the other angels who bowed before God, who followed divine commands without question, and he felt something he had never known before: resentment. Why should I bow when my brilliance rivals even the heavens? Why should I serve when I am capable of ruling? Day by day, these thoughts grew stronger. His reflection no longer seemed like that of a humble servant, but of a sovereign yet to claim his throne. He began to entertain the idea of a new order, one where he was not second to anyone, where he was not just an angel among many, but a God unto himself. Lucifer convinced himself that the throne of heaven need not belong to God alone. After all, was he not worthy? Had he not been created perfect in every way? The more he gazed upon his own brilliance, the less he could accept the idea of submission. He was no mere subject, he was a ruler in his own right. Then came the ultimate realization, the thought that would seal his fate. If I am strong enough to rule, then why should I not take the throne for myself? His heart hardened. His once loyal spirit twisted into something unrecognizable. He began to see God not as his creator, but as a rival. And in that moment, Lucifer made a decision, one that would change the course of eternity. He would challenge the Almighty. If he could rally enough angels to his cause, if he could turn the celestial host against the throne, then he could seize power for himself. He envisioned a heaven ruled by his will, a kingdom where his name would be exalted above all others. Lucifer believed he was not merely rebelling, he was fulfilling his destiny. But what he failed to see was that this path, once taken, could never be undone. And it was the greatest mistake he would ever make. Lucifer's words were honeyed, his arguments flawless. He began seeking out the most powerful of the angels, those with influence and strength, those who had perhaps, in secret, asked the same questions he had. He did not rush. No, he was patient. He planted seeds of doubt, nurtured them with careful precision, letting them grow within the minds of those he sought to recruit. He spoke of freedom, of power, of a new order in which the strongest would reign, where angels would no longer be mere servants, but rulers of their own fate. And though some turned away in horror, others listened. Others began to see the truth in his words. Lucifer knew that a war would come, and he was prepared. He would not act recklessly. He would not strike before the time was right. He needed an army. He needed numbers. And so he whispered, he persuaded, he promised. And slowly, angels began to fall in line behind him. The moment came when Lucifer could wait no longer. He stood before his followers, his army of rebels, and declared what had once been unthinkable. "We will take the throne of heaven." The heavens trembled with the weight of those words. The angels loyal to God, those who had seen the growing darkness in Lucifer's heart, gathered against him. The lines were drawn, the war was at hand. Michael, the great archangel, stood at the forefront of God's army. His voice rang through the celestial realm like a trumpet of divine judgment. "Who is like God?" he demanded. His sword, forged in the fires of eternity, gleamed with unyielding light. Lucifer, once the brightest of all, now stood in opposition to the very source of his power. He did not waver. He did not doubt. He had convinced himself that this was his fate, that he was destined to rule. And so, with fire in his eyes and rebellion in his heart, he raised his own weapon. The war in heaven had begun. The clash was unlike anything the cosmos had ever seen. Angels of unimaginable power collided, light against light, force against force. The very fabric of existence shuddered under the weight of their battle. Swords of pure energy clashed, celestial beings fell from the skies like shooting stars, and the heavens quaked with the sound of combat. Lucifer fought with fury, his radiance still untarnished, his strength still unmatched. But against the full might of God's loyal host, even he began to falter. Michael stood before him, unwavering. With one final blow, he cast Lucifer down, the once brightest angel plummeting like a falling star, his screams echoing through the heavens. And then, silence. Lucifer and his followers fell into the abyss, their divine forms stripped away, their splendor reduced to shadow. They became the fallen, the exiled, the forsaken. But even as he fell, Lucifer did not repent. He vowed that his war was not over. It had only just begun. From the depths of his exile, Lucifer took on a new name, Satan, the adversary. No longer the light bringer, he now ruled over a kingdom of despair. His throne was not of gold, but of flame. His crown not of jewels, but of suffering. Yet even in his defeat, he did not surrender. If he could not rule heaven, then he would rule elsewhere. If he could not overthrow God, then he would turn his creation against him. And so, the great deceiver set his sights upon a new battlefield, the hearts and minds of humankind. He would not need an army of angels this time. He would simply need a whisper. And so, the war continued, not in heaven, but on earth. The seeds of rebellion had been sown, and now they took root in the hearts of many angels. Lucifer, with his unmatched charisma and silver tongue, gathered his followers in secrecy. His voice carried the weight of conviction, his words dripping with promise. Why should we kneel when we were born to stand tall? Why should we serve when we possess power of our own? Would the Almighty truly be so just if He denies us our right to rule ourselves? A murmur of agreement spread among those who listened. The fire of ambition, once contained in Lucifer alone, now spread like wildfire through the ranks of heaven's hosts. A third of the angels, those who had once stood as guardians of divine order, began to question, to doubt, to desire more. And so, the rebellion took shape. Lucifer envisioned a new order, a heaven where he reigned supreme, where the will of one, not the decree of another, dictated the cosmos. No more servitude, no more submission, only power, only freedom. But he was not content with whispers in the shadows. It was time to act. When the day of reckoning arrived, the heavens trembled. The archangel Michael, warrior of divine justice, stood at the forefront of the loyal hosts. His radiant armor shone with the brilliance of celestial fire, and in his hand he wielded a sword forged from pure light. His voice rang out like thunder across the celestial expanse. Who is like God? Lucifer, draped in a dark radiance of his own making, sneered. He no longer saw himself as an angel, but as a king in waiting. With a single motion, he called forth his legions. The air crackled with energy, the harmony of heaven now shattered by the roar of defiance. And so, war erupted. The skies, once peaceful and endless, became a battlefield of divine fury. Blades of pure light clashed with darkness incarnate. The clash of wings sent tremors through the fabric of existence. The songs of praise once sung in unison were now drowned by the sounds of battle cries and the lamentations of the fallen. Michael and Lucifer met at the heart of the battlefield, where the forces of order and chaos collided in a spectacle that shook the very foundation of creation. "You have lost yourself, Lucifer," Michael declared, parrying a strike from the fallen angel's fiery blade. "No, Michael," Lucifer spat, his once melodic voice now laced with venom. "I have found myself, and I will not be chained any longer." Their battle raged across the heavens, a dance of light and shadow, power and defiance. Every strike sent shockwaves through the realms, and every moment brought them closer to the inevitable. But Lucifer had made a fatal miscalculation. He had underestimated the unbreakable will of heaven. One by one, his forces began to falter. The angels who had once followed him with blind ambition now saw the cost of their betrayal. They were not creators. They were not sovereigns. They were lost souls led astray by pride. And then, the final blow came. With a mighty strike of divine judgment, Michael cast Lucifer down. The heavens wept as the brightest star fell from grace, his light consumed by the abyss. His cries of rage and despair echoed through creation as he plummeted, and with him, his followers, now nameless shadows of their former selves. As he fell, Lucifer reached out, as if grasping for the power he had once held. But the light of heaven was beyond his reach now. The gates of paradise closed behind him, forever shutting him out from the place he once called home. And so, the morning star became the prince of darkness. Lucifer was no longer the beacon of light, no longer the guardian of celestial order. He was Satan, the adversary, the fallen one, the eternal enemy of God and man. And in the depths of the abyss, as the fires of his new dominion rose around him, he made a vow: "If I cannot rule in heaven, then I shall reign in hell." The birth of a new kingdom. The abyss stretched before him, an endless void filled with suffering and chaos. Lucifer, now stripped of his celestial splendor, stood at the precipice of his new domain. The other fallen angels, now demons, crawled toward him, their wings tattered, their radiance long extinguished. Yet even in his downfall, Lucifer did not despair. He had lost the war, but the battle was far from over. If he could not have heaven, he would create something else, something darker, something twisted, something that would rival the very kingdom he had been cast from. With every ounce of his shattered might, he shaped the abyss into a throne of fire and ruin. He named this place Hell, a realm where suffering reigned, where torment was eternal. It was a place of his own making, a kingdom where he ruled absolutely. And for the first time he laughed. Lucifer's rebellion had not ended, it had only changed form. If he could not overthrow God in heaven, then he would strike at his creation. The battle was no longer fought with swords of light, but with whispers in the dark. He would twist the hearts of men, turn them against their Creator, just as he had turned a third of heaven's hosts against their rightful king. And so, the great war continued, not in the heavens, but in the souls of mankind. Lucifer had lost his wings, but he had found his purpose. And the world would never be the same again. Lucifer, once the most radiant of all God's creations, now found himself tumbling through an endless void. The light that once defined him, that had set him apart as the most magnificent of angels, had been stripped away. He was no longer a being of celestial brilliance, no longer the morning star who stood at the pinnacle of divine authority. Now he was simply a fallen entity, spiraling downward into an abyss of his own making. As the gates of heaven slammed shut behind him, the echoes of his own screams filled the void. Was it agony? Was it rage? Or was it the unbearable weight of realization that he had lost everything? He had dared to challenge the Almighty, believing himself equal to the Creator, and now he was nothing more than an outcast. His angelic wings, once woven from the very essence of divine light, were now blackened and twisted, their purity burned away by his own pride. He could no longer hear the sacred hymns that once graced his ears. There was no harmony, no beauty, only the deafening silence of the abyss, interrupted by the tortured cries of the angels who had followed him. They had believed in his vision, in his promise of a new order, and now they too were damned. They were no longer the divine warriors of heaven, no longer the celestial beings they once were. They had been transformed, disfigured, distorted, and cursed. They had become demons. Lucifer's fall was not merely a physical descent. It was a transformation that reshaped his very essence. The light within him had been utterly consumed, replaced by something darker, something far more terrifying. He was no longer the beacon of heaven, the bringer of light. He was now the embodiment of darkness, of corruption, of eternal defiance. As he struck the deepest chasm of the abyss, flames erupted around him. But these were not ordinary flames. They did not burn with heat. nor did they sear flesh. They burned with something far worse: hatred, humiliation, and an unquenchable thirst for vengeance. Lucifer had lost everything, but he would not wallow in despair. No, he would rise again, not as an angel, not as a servant, but as a ruler. He lifted his head, and for the first time since his fall he spoke, not in sorrow, but in cold, unwavering determination. "If I cannot rule in heaven, then I shall reign in hell." In that moment, Lucifer ceased to exist. He was no longer the light bearer. He was no longer the morning star. He was something else now, something darker, more sinister. He was Satan. Hell was not a place created by God. It was not a prison designed for punishment. It was a kingdom forged by Satan himself, a realm of darkness built from his own hatred and defiance. If heaven had cast him out, he would create his own domain, a twisted reflection of the paradise he had lost. It would be a place where the forsaken could rule, where the rejected could find power, where those who had once been angels could embrace their newfound forms as demons. He was not alone. Those who had fallen with him, the legions of angels who had once sworn allegiance to his cause, now stood before him, broken, lost, uncertain. But Satan was not uncertain. He had lost heaven, but he had gained something else, an unrelenting purpose. He would no longer serve. He would no longer bow. Here, in this infernal kingdom, he would be king. And so, he shaped the abyss into his throne. The flames that burned with his hatred became the foundation of his kingdom. The darkness that had consumed him became his power. And from the depths of his new dominion, he gave his first command to his fallen brethren: "Rise." One by one, the fallen angels lifted their heads. They were no longer celestial beings of light. They were demons, creatures of the abyss. And they had a new master. But ruling over hell was not enough. Satan's fury could not be contained within the infernal realm he had created. His war against God had not ended. It had only just begun. He could no longer storm the gates of heaven. He could no longer challenge the Almighty directly. But he could still strike at him in another way. If he could not defeat God, then he would corrupt his greatest creation, mankind. He had watched as God shaped the first humans, Adam and Eve. He had seen the divine love poured into them, the light that shone in their souls, the purity that made them so precious in the Creator's eyes. And that was the key. If he could not overthrow heaven, then he would poison its most cherished creation. He would make man just like him, fallen, broken, lost in the darkness. No longer the leader of heavenly choirs, Satan would now become something else entirely. He would be the whisperer, the deceiver, the great tempter. He would not strike with swords of light, but with words that sowed doubt, with promises that led to ruin. And when humanity fell, when they turned away from the light and embraced sin, he would revel in his triumph. He had lost heaven, but he would take earth. And through humanity, he would make God suffer. And so, he waited, lurking in the shadows of Eden, watching as the first humans wandered in blissful ignorance. He bided his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to set his grand plan in motion. The war was far from over. It had only just begun. From the depths of hell, Lucifer refused to accept the fate of an outcast. He knew he no longer had the power to confront God directly, but he also understood that there was another way to take revenge, by destroying the most precious creation of the Almighty, mankind. When God created Adam and Eve, he bestowed upon them a gift even the angels did not have: free will. Adam and Eve lived in the Garden of Eden, a place filled with light and absolute happiness. They knew no suffering, had no worries about the future, and above all, they lived in direct communion with God. However, amidst that paradise, there was only one rule they had to follow. They were forbidden to eat the fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Lucifer realized that to pull humanity away from God's embrace, he could not use force. He had to use cunning. He could not compel humans to betray God, but he could make them choose to do so willingly. The transformation into the serpent, the symbol of temptation. Lucifer chose to take the form of a serpent, a small yet cunning creature. He did not appear as a terrifying figure, nor did he threaten with power. Instead, he whispered, planting seeds of doubt. When Eve wandered near the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, the serpent slithered up beside her. With a soft, alluring voice, he asked, "Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?" Eve, still innocent, replied, "No, we may eat from all the trees except this one. God said that if we eat from it, we will surely die." Lucifer smiled. This was the moment he had been waiting for. "No, you will not surely die," he whispered. "God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like him, knowing good and evil. You will no longer be mere creatures. You will be powerful, enlightened. God does not want you to be his equal, which is why he forbade you." His words echoed in Eve's mind. A new flame began to flicker within her, a desire for knowledge, a yearning for power. She looked at the ripe red fruit on the tree. It no longer seemed forbidden and dangerous. Instead, it appeared irresistibly tempting. She reached out, plucked it, and took a bite. In that instant, everything changed. Eve handed the fruit to Adam, and he ate it as well. In an instant, their purity was shattered. For the first time, they felt shame, realizing their nakedness, and fear crept into their hearts. Lucifer, watching from the shadows, smiled in satisfaction. He did not need to wage war. He did not need to overthrow God by force. With nothing but a whisper, he had caused humanity to betray their Creator. The punishment came swiftly. God appeared, and Adam and Eve, now ashamed, hid in fear. But there was nowhere to escape from the Almighty. God cast them out of Eden, sending them into a world filled with hardship, pain, and suffering. They would now toil for survival, endure sorrow, and face death. Lucifer had succeeded. He had severed humanity from the perfection of paradise. But he did not stop there. After his first victory, Lucifer realized a crucial truth. Humanity had weaknesses. They were easily swayed by desires, ambitions, and fears. He did not need to force people into wrongdoing. He only needed to whisper into their minds, awakening the hidden cravings already within them. For thousands of years, he has continued to whisper into the ears of proud kings, making them believe they were gods. He has approached those who seek power, leading them to betray their friends to achieve their goals. He has come to lost souls, pushing them deeper into the darkness of despair and hatred. Lucifer never stops. He knows that as long as mankind has free will, he will always have the chance to lead them astray. And the battle between light and darkness is far from over. The story of Lucifer is not merely an ancient myth, but an eternal metaphor for the battle between good and evil, light and darkness. This struggle does not unfold in the heavens or in legendary wars, but within the soul of every human being, every single day. Since the dawn of time, the world has been shaped by two fundamental forces. Good and evil are not distant, abstract concepts, but real, tangible influences that exist in every decision we make. The light of God inspires love, compassion, forgiveness, and humility. In contrast, the darkness of Lucifer entices with whispers of power, ambition, desire, and destruction. Lucifer does not manifest as a monstrous entity with horns and fire. Instead, he dwells in the shadows of human thought, in selfish desires, in the small betrayals, in the unchecked thirst for dominance. He hides within false promises, in fleeting pleasures, in the unchecked rage that turns men against each other. This battle is not one that can be seen with the eyes, yet it rages on ceaselessly, shaping the destiny of mankind. God, in His infinite wisdom, bestowed upon humanity the gift of free will. But this freedom is both a blessing and a burden. It can elevate a person to heights of goodness and grace, or it can drag them into the abyss of greed, hatred, and despair. Some dedicate their lives to righteousness, choosing kindness and selflessness. Others surrender to darkness, allowing envy and resentment to govern their actions. Lucifer does not force anyone into his grasp. He merely presents choices, temptations that seem appealing, paths that appear easy but lead to ruin. Humanity's greatest challenge is not external but internal, the power to choose between light and darkness. One does not need to look into ancient texts to find evidence of this eternal struggle. It is unfolding all around us. When those in power exploit the weak, darkness prevails. But when a single act of kindness is performed without expectation, light is restored. When a child is abandoned in despair, the shadows grow deeper. But when someone offers them love and guidance, hope flourishes once more. When war and hatred consume nations, Lucifer rejoices. But when people stand up for justice and sacrifice for the good of others, God's presence is undeniable. In the modern world, temptations are more subtle than ever. Wealth, status, unchecked ambition. These things are not inherently evil, but when they consume a person's heart, when they place personal gain above morality, Lucifer's influence strengthens. Every day, humanity stands at a crossroads. A single word can bring healing or inflict deep wounds. A small action can create hope or deepen despair. The weight of these choices is immense. Yet it is in these moments that the battle between good and evil is truly fought. God does not demand obedience. He offers a path. But it is up to each person to decide whether to follow the light or succumb to the darkness. Lucifer whispers to all, feeding pride and selfish ambition. Yet God also whispers, calling souls toward love and grace. In the end, it is not fate nor destiny, but the will of each individual that determines which voice they will follow. The story of Lucifer is not merely a myth about a fallen angel. It is a mirror reflecting the choices of humanity itself. Within every person exists both light and darkness, and every decision we make shapes our destiny. Lucifer's fall is not just a cautionary tale, but a guidepost, urging us to understand the forces that drive us and to choose our paths wisely. Lucifer's downfall did not begin with an act of rebellion. It began with a thought that he deserved more than what he was given. Pride is not just an ordinary vice. It is the root of many other sins. When a person sees themselves as the center of the universe, they easily look down on others, believing they have the right to judge and control everything around them. It is this arrogance that blinds them to the truth and leads them toward destruction. History has shown that many powerful empires have collapsed due to the arrogance of their leaders. The greatest scientists, artists, and philosophers have all realized that true wisdom begins with humility, understanding that human knowledge is limited and that there is always more to learn. Lucifer is the clearest example of this lesson. When an individual places their ego above everything else, destruction becomes inevitable. Pride may whisper promises of power, but it ultimately leads to isolation and ruin. After being cast into hell, Lucifer did not abandon his ambitions. He could not defeat God, but he could destroy what God cherished most: humanity. Temptation is his greatest weapon. It does not appear in the form of a terrifying demon, but hides within seemingly harmless things: a small lie, a quiet envy, a selfish act. Temptation does not force. It merely presents an option, allowing people to walk into darkness of their own accord. In the Garden of Eden, Lucifer did not force Eve to eat the forbidden fruit. He merely planted doubt. He questioned. He unsettled, and he led humanity to make the wrong choice by themselves. This is how he has manipulated people throughout all ages. Today, temptation no longer comes in the form of a talking serpent, but in the things we encounter daily: power, money, lust, fame. These desires, when unchecked, lead people down paths of selfishness and destruction. Humans always have a choice, but not everyone is strong enough to follow the light. One of the key reasons for Lucifer's fall was greed, his desire for more than what was given to him. Greed comes in many forms: greed for wealth, greed for power, greed for control. When people are consumed by greed, they are never satisfied. They may lose their morals, betray others, or even destroy themselves to achieve what they desire. Lucifer was never content with his position, and that is why he lost everything. In life, there are those who are willing to sacrifice everything for success, yet once they attain it, they feel empty. On the other hand, those who know how to appreciate what they have often find true peace. The pursuit of more is not inherently evil, but when it overshadows gratitude and morality, it becomes a consuming fire. No one is born entirely good or entirely evil. Both forces exist within each person. There are times when we do good, but there are also times when we make mistakes. What matters is recognizing those mistakes and having the will to correct them. Lucifer lost his chance to turn back because he never accepted his faults. But humans are different. We have the ability to change, to learn, and to atone. Every day we face choices: keep a promise or betray, forgive or hold on to hatred, help others or think only of ourselves. Each of these decisions, no matter how small, is a battle between good and evil within us. Though Lucifer was eternally cast into darkness, humans still have the opportunity to return to the light. No matter how many mistakes you have made, no matter how far you have strayed, the path back is always there, as long as you are willing to walk it. Redemption is not just in words, but in actions. Forgiveness is not only about forgiving others, but also about forgiving yourself. Love is not merely a feeling, but a choice. No one is destined to be good or evil. It all depends on what we choose to do. The story of Lucifer is a warning, but also a lesson in hope. The darkness may always exist, but so does the light. Lucifer chose the path of darkness, but you do not have to.